Thank you, Chair. To my colleagues and fellow members of the committee, our resource persons and guests, ladies and gentlemen, magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. As we convene for this hearing, I am reminded of the immense responsibility that lies before us. We are tasked with examining some of the most critical issues that our nation faces today. Issues that go to the heart of justice, human right, human dignity, and the rule of law. Admittedly, this inquiry has drawn criticism, with some suggesting it amounts to political harassment. To those who harbor such fears, I say this: if there's nothing to hide, there should be nothing to fear. As public officials, we bear the solemn duty to uphold the truth, contribute to justice, and ensure that our actions are beyond reproach. We must all be willing to participate in this inquiry, for it is not merely a legal obligation, it is a moral one as well. Once again, it reminds me of Isaiah 1:17, where it says, "Learn to do well, seek judgment, relieve the oppressed, judge the fatherless, plead for the widow." This passage calls for justice and the protection of the vulnerable. It underscores our collective obligation to seek the truth and act justly. But let me stress today that it is not enough to speak of righteousness. We must actively pursue it, especially when the stakes involve the lives and rights of our kababayan. In our first hearing, I mentioned several key issues that had been tackled in the Committee on Human Rights, including whether human rights violations were committed during the anti-illegal drugs campaign of the previous administration, whether the state's obligation to protect human rights were adhered to, and whether our existing laws and policies are sufficient to safeguard these rights. We have been presented with data that is both staggering and heartbreaking. The sheer number of drug-related killings, whether conducted by state forces or unidentified assailants, demands not just our attention, but more importantly, action. Action. Kailangan po nating kumilos. For these deaths are not just statistics. They represent lives cut short, families irreparably shattered, and communities left in fear. In our committee, the testimonies we have heard thus far reveal a distressing pattern of a state that at times has failed to protect its citizens and in some cases may have even abetted the violations of their rights. It is clear that the systems and laws meant to protect human rights have, in many instances, been inadequate or poorly enforced. As we move forward, let us remember that our goal is not to vilify or to shield any individual, but to uncover the truth and to ensure that justice is served. We owe this to the victims and their families, to the rule of law, and to the future of our nation. Hustisya po ang pakay natin, hindi harassment. I call upon all who have been summoned to testify to fulfill their duty as public servants. Let all sides be heard, and let no one say that they were not given the opportunity to present evidence in their defense. What the leadership of the House is doing is unprecedented. We are here, united across several committees, to confront and address some of the gravest challenges facing our nation. The proliferation of POGOs, the scourge of illegal drugs, and the devastating reality of extrajudicial killings. These are not just isolated issues. As we have emphasized from the beginning, these issues represent a larger, more insidious threat, one that seeks to undermine the very fabric of our society. These evils, left unchecked, have the power to erode our values, destroy our communities, and claim the lives of our kababayan. That is why the House of Representatives, under the leadership of Speaker Ferdinand Martin Romualdez, has committed substantial resources to this investigation. We understand that the stakes are incredibly high. My friends, our constituents have entrusted us with the responsibility to ensure their safety, to protect their rights, and to create a future where every Filipino can thrive in a society that is just, progressive, and prosperous. This trust is not something we take lightly. We have an obligation, no, a mandate, to stand resolutely against any forces that seek to do wrong, to corrupt, or to oppress. Mandato po natin ito. Trabaho po natin ito. In action, in the face of evil itself, the findings and recommendations that emerge from these hearings must lead to concrete actions, whether in the form of new legislation, reforms to existing policies, or holding those accountable who have violated the trust placed in them by the people. Let this inquiry serve as a symbol of our commitment to justice, and let it remind us all of the power we hold to shape the future of our nation. Together, we can and will create a Philippines that is safe, just, united against the forces of evil. Magandang umaga po. Salamat sa inyo lahat.
Thank you, Congressman Abante.
Mr. Chair.